This video is a short guide to exam access arrangements. So to start off with, what actually are exam access arrangements? Access arrangements are adjustments that are made for individual students based on a clear evidence of need and that it is their normal way of working. The arrangements fall into two categories. Some of the arrangements are decided by us as a centre, as a school. So if we have evidence that a student needs to use, for example, a word processor, we can put that in place. Other adjustments, however, require application to the JCQ and have to be approved and awarded by them. So, for example, additional time or the use of a scribe. Whether it's decided by us or whether it's decided by the JCQ, they still have to be based on the evidence of need and that it is a student's normal way of working. The evidence that has to be provided, so specific testing or any evidence of need like medical information, that has to be kept by centres or submitted to the JCQ. The testing is usually done from the end of year 9 in order to be valid for GCSE qualifications. And the whole point of exam access arrangements is to allow candidates who have special educational needs, disabilities, or maybe temporary injuries like broken arms to demonstrate their knowledge and skills without being disadvantaged by whatever their need may be. And that complies with the Equality Act of 2010. Throughout the video, I'm going to talk through some of the main types of adjustments that we see in school, and most importantly, how they work themselves in practice. If a student is entitled to rest breaks and we've got evidence of that need, then basically how that works is that the time of the exam is paused so that a student can have a supervised break. That break might be at a pre-arranged point, so maybe halfway through the exam, or it could be that a student will raise their hand and ask to take a break when they need one. Students cannot have access to their question paper and they cannot add to their answers during their rest breaks. And if they do need to leave the room, they'll be accompanied and then supervised. Extra time in an exam is something that is awarded by the JCQ. If a student is entitled to additional time, they'll be granted either 25% or 50% additional time by the JCQ. They'll be awarded that for all of their exams. It is, however, the student's choice whether or not they use any, some or all of that extra time that's available to them. Another adjustment that can be in place for some students is the use of a word processor. This is something that's awarded by us as a centre, but again we have to have evidence that there is a need and that it is a student's usual way of working. How this will work in practice is that if a student has access to a word processor, then it will be set up for them at the start of the exam, ready for them to use. Any spell check, the internet, things like that will all have been disabled so they can only access the Word document that they need. Students do have some flexibility, however, so if it's an exam paper that has a mixture of extended answers and short answers, they might decide to word process their extended answers but then handwrite their short answers or any equations or tables or calculations that they have to do. Both the electronic version of their work and the exam paper itself will be collected in and submitted to be marked. If a student is entitled to a reader to support them during an exam, there are some really clear guidelines on what the reader can and cannot do. The reader can read the instructions of the question paper and the questions themselves to the candidate. They may read the whole paper to the student, or the student might ask for certain words to be read aloud, having read the majority of it for themselves. A reader is only allowed to read the instructions of the question paper or the questions. They're not allowed to explain, clarify or adjust the language of anything from the paper. Perhaps most usefully, one of the things that a reader can do is they can read back, if they're asked to, what a candidate has written, and that might help students to realise if they've missed something or not expressed something as clearly as they would have hoped. If a student does want something to be read to them, they need to ask for that. The reader won't approach them in the exam and offer. Obviously, some of our exam papers are assessing reading. So, for example, in English language, there are reading questions, and in modern foreign languages, there are reading skills being tested there too. If that's the case, the questions and the text cannot be read aloud to the student. However, because the student is having to read more independently, they can have additional time in order to read those texts for themselves. Some students will qualify for the use of a prompter during their exams. This is particularly useful for students who find it really difficult to keep track of time, sometimes where students lose concentration, or maybe get caught up on one question and look at it repeatedly rather than move on to other questions on the paper. The prompter can help the student to refocus by saying their name, for example, and telling them how much time has passed and how much time they have left. Sometimes students will benefit from being reminded how much time has passed by a non-verbal signal, so for example tapping the desk every 15 minutes to indicate that that much time has passed. A prompter may also notice that a student has lost focus and refocus them by saying their name. Where a student qualifies for a prompter, we'll talk to them about what kind of prompting they would need and use things like the mock exams to test which way works best for them. After applying to the JCQ, some students may be awarded a scribe. A scribe's role is to write or type exactly what a candidate says to them in order to answer the questions. They're not any sort of assistant, prompter or a reader unless the candidate has those access arrangements too. If the question paper is asking for anything to be written or drawn, so for example maps, diagrams and graphs, then the scribe must follow the candidate's instructions precisely and write or draw exactly what they're told to. If design itself is being assessed, then the scribe would only be able to help with the written paper. They can as well, at the candidate's request, read back what has been written. So if the candidate has dictated what they would like to be written in their answer, they can ask the scribe to read it back for them. Once access arrangements have been granted, we will put those in place for mock exams and any other assessments where possible in school. If you have questions about the exam access arrangements for your child and how they'll work, or if you're concerned that your child may be entitled to exam access arrangements, please contact the school. Thank you very much.